Unmute. Okay, so we're now recording. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and welcome to the 5th installation of the Faculty Spotlight. Adam Liang and I will be hosting you today. For those of you who've been here before, you might already know this, but with the Faculty Spotlights, we're really just trying to help expose ourselves and anybody who's interested in tuning in to what the lives of our professors are like outside of the classroom. We're all very thankful to be at Penn, being exposed to such highly esteemed faculty members who do amazing research, teach amazing lectures, have interesting professional backgrounds as well. But all too often we get caught up in our classes and don't really ask the right questions. So Adam and I have kind of taken it upon ourselves to get to know these professors a little bit better. So again, if you've been in our podcast before, then you might recall that we've in the past interviewed Professors Dustin Roberts, Jordan Rady, machine shop technician Joe Valdez, and Igor Bargadin as well. So Adam, if you'd like to take over and introduce today's.
Yeah, definitely. Want to introduce myself first too. Adam Liang, originally from Atlanta, Georgia, and Jason's from Yardley, Pennsylvania. And one of the things that we've really enjoyed at Penn are kind of the hands-on learning classes. And one of the things that we're really excited about during our senior year in mechanical engineering is senior design. And so without further ado, we'd like to present Graham Wabiszewski. He's a senior lecturer at Penn, and he also taught one of my favorite courses, Mechanical Engineering 201. And he also kind of leads the MEAM senior design activities. And we'll get to that later on in the podcast. So Graham, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. And we're excited to get to talk to you and to get to, allow students to hear about, things that exist in your life outside of teaching at Penn. And so I guess one of the first things that we would like to talk to you about is just give us a little bit about your background, your hometown, where you're from, and what you studied in undergrad, any graduate degrees that you got, and ultimately how you came to Penn.
Certainly, yeah. So I'll maybe just start at square one. So I come from Wisconsin, land of the Packers, which just recently the Packers had a very nail-biter of a game.
Yeah.
Go Pack. So born in Wisconsin in a suburb of Milwaukee called Greendale. Which is actually, and tell me if I'm taking too many tangents here, but it's a really, I think, kind of unique town in the United States. It's kind of modeled after more of a European town, and it was part of like a public works project, I believe, back in the 30s or something. So it's a very nice community to grow up in. So born there back in the 80s, I'm getting kind of old now. And then, obviously, grade school, middle school, high school, things of that nature. I would say I was very fortunate to be in a very good school system. And I think that was part of the motivation of actually, so my grandparents originally settled where we lived. Yeah. It was a side-by-side house. So I actually grew up next door to my grandparents, which I think was totally awesome. And I think one of the motivators for coming to that community was my grandma was Scottish and the town was very familiar. It was a very nice town. I think the other thing too is they had a nice school system. So I feel very fortunate that I was raised in a very high quality school system, which not everybody has access to. And my schools were very, very close to like the house that I lived in. So like a couple blocks one way for grade school and middle school, and a couple blocks in the other direction for high school. And I don't know if I appreciated that at the time, but like the quality of the school system or the proximity. But in retrospect, I think it was a real leg up in life. So graduated high school around like 99, 2000, if memory serves me correct. And then I went to University of Wisconsin-Madison for my undergraduate. And I actually started in the business school in accounting.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think I did 2.5 years of that.
Wow.
And then, so I did that. And at that point in my life, I worked in a foundry for a little bit. I had worked in like a dry cleaning place for a little bit, lots of like odd jobs, some of them very clean, some of them very dirty. And then during that period of my life, I worked a lot in banks. And so I got some exposure to, what is the day-to-day like in a business environment? And I had, gained that experience of being in the business school. And about somewhere in between the second and third year, I was like, this just isn't for me. And not to be dismissive of business schools, it just, personally for me, it didn't match my expectations of what I wanted to do with my life. So then I think that was like the hardest decision I've ever made in my life. And I was like, this can either turn out really well or very bad, especially from a monetary perspective, because I was paying for school real time. And the proposition there is like, you're going to have to, like, I had to work real time to make money to go to school. And the proposition there was like, this is going to get very financially difficult. And it did, and I racked up some money on my credit card, not the best way to kind of cover, and a little bit of help from my parents at some very key time points. I think I was a little bit too proud to ask for more help. But so I made that switch, and so I was trying to figure out like, what major should I major in? And I think, you know, high on my list was like computer engineering and electrical engineering and mechanical engineering, of course. A lot of that had to do with the experiences I had growing up. I loved taking apart things far before I learned how to put them back together, for sure. And I still have that experience occasionally. But so ultimately, I shouldn't say settled, I think would be the wrong word. I went for mechanical engineering because I really liked the physicality of it. I was really scared of electrical engineering because it all seems so imaginary. I used to have a quote on my whiteboard that says, I don't like electronics because they're like magic. So, you know, these days I, you know, kind of self-learn a lot more about electrical engineering concepts. Not coming to be an expert, but I understand more about it now.
And you know exactly what you need to supplement your mechanical engineering.
Exactly. And I really appreciate it now. It's just, you know, having the time to dip into it. Took some time in my life to get there. So I made this really tough decision, in my mind at least, to kind of really change paths dramatically. And I think something that really influenced that as well was I was living in a house. I think there were 6 of us in like a townhouse, like shared university housing. And many of my housemates were engineers as well. And I constantly find myself like, just for like bedtime reading, like grabbing calculus books or my old calculus book from high school. Just really enjoying reading that kind of stuff, which I still enjoy to this day. Or you know, books on material science books and things of that nature. And so I had a lot of different types of engineers in the house, ranging from like civil, mechanical, I think, electrical, and computer engineering, I think was kind of the chemical engineering was another one. So a large lay of the land. So I think that helped influence like, what do I know about these areas? And that kind of helped influence me going down the mechanical engineering path. So then I did that. I think it took me maybe like another 2.5 or 3 years, if memory serves me correct, to finish off that degree. There wasn't a lot of transfer over of credits, but I tried to push it a little bit harder. Just because, you know, time is money in my case, and I had to work real time to pay for school. And then after that, so in my undergraduate, I just had this very lucky happening upon a magazine, which I can talk about later if you want, that I think really dramatically changed the course of my life, or maybe reinforced my hopeful path. And as a result of that incident and just some follow-up things that happened, I ended up doing undergraduate research for a professor at Wisconsin-Madison, and actually who was recently kind of no longer, but up until very recently was the chair of this department, Professor Robert Carpet. And at the time I was like reading a bunch of his papers, and I didn't even know he worked at Wisconsin. I was just reading them for fun. Like, they focused on like nanoscale friction, and I was working at the bank at the time. They didn't have a lot for me to do, but it was like money. Every hour I was there, that was money in my pocket. They're like, just look busy.
I was like reading Carpet's papers.
And the internet was locked down, so I would like email my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now. I would email her, like, can you get this paper and email it to me? And then I'd read it, and then I'd be in the lunchroom like, hey, did you know a nanometer compared to a meter, and so stuff like that. So then I had all that. So as a result of all that, I reached out to him, and he was gracious enough to let me engage some undergraduate research and work with some grad students, or grad student in his lab who was so helpful to me. Shout out to Aaron. And I think I did that for a couple years as an undergraduate. I guess what would typically be like your junior and senior year, but not really, because my whole path was like, the timing of my path was very different. And then I was coming up on my last semester, and Rob had said to me, he's like, I don't know if this is good news or bad news for you, but I've accepted a position at the University of Pennsylvania. And I remember like the second day I worked in his lab, I'm like, I want to work for this guy in grad school. I want him to be my boss. He's an awesome person and a good scientist and a good human, which, you know, the Venn diagram doesn't always overlap on that front. It does more often than not, but it doesn't.
Don't tell anyone.
Yeah. I mean, you know, people that are highly technical can, you know, as far as human interactions, it can be a struggle.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was, I was like, I remember talking to like my mom and my dad, and I was like, I want to parlay this into graduate school. And so it just happened at the right time. And he said, you know, look around, and I, like, in the back of my head, I'm like, I want it. Wherever you're going, I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
And so it had a big draw for me just to keep that boss. I liked what he was working on. I liked his management style.
Yeah.
And so he moved out here, and he actually helped move my girlfriend at the time, wife now, and a couple other grad students that he currently had. So I was kind of transitioning undergrad to grad student. He helped move us out here from Wisconsin, rented us a U-Haul van, and we moved 4 individuals over here from December 31st to January 1st of 2007. I remember the date.
Wow.
And came out here. I think for me, I did a PhD, and I think the whole process was about 6 years. With it was like a nanotech focus, and there's kind of different phases of it and different experiences I had there. And then there was this opportunity for a lecturer position at the time. Like as soon as I finished my PhD, I think I defended in July, and the position, I think the position, we usually typically start in August. So I think basically I defended, and then the next week I was preparing for courses, which was kind of like my undergrad grad school transition, where it was like, I'm taking my last final, and it was really late in December. It was like the 20th or something. Actually, it was like really late. It was like just before Christmas. Pack up a research lab, or help pack up a research lab, pack up your life, move out to Philly, and
that is crazy.
Like 14 days later, or maybe 14 to 20 days later, you're in a graduate level course. So it's just a very quick life transition. Same thing with the transition to this job.
Wow. You really don't need to have your life planned to a T. You know, it's like there's so many Penn students who and I was a victim to this, and I'm sure Jason's experiences too. Like planning everything. Like I want to have a 5-year timeline. I want to have a 10-year timeline. And your path has made it seem like you just sat there and you're like, I'm okay with this. I want to do it. Well, I think that's amazing.
Well, and definitely, you know,
you probably evaluated the risks and the cost and benefits, but
and I think I still have a book up on my shelf somewhere here, and it's like alternative paths after a PhD. Like, you know, you kind of get stuck in this like environment of feedback in academia, where it's like, if you don't become a professor or a lecturer or something like that, like you failed somehow. At least that's the impression I had when I was at that time point in my life. And I just didn't really buy into that. I think there's really fun and interesting things happening in industry. There's tons of bright people out there, and there's tons of opportunities. It doesn't always feel like it, especially the way the job market and applying to jobs treats you. But there's a lot of interesting things out there, whether it be academia or industry. So, you know, I was very prepared for my life to go many different ways. That being said, I think I've really been like a school-minded person. And I remember this back in 1st or 2nd grade, one of those early memories, and I came back from school and I was like crying because I got an A- on something. And don't worry, I got plenty of C's at but, like later on. But I had gotten like an A-, and my mom was trying to calm me down, and she was like, it's okay, honey, like you tried hard. And then I remember like in a similar, or around that same conversation, she's like, I think you're going to be in school for the rest of your life. You really enjoy it, and that's, you know, what kind of checks the boxes for you. And I would say to a large measure it does. So I wouldn't say, you know, my grand plan in life was, you know, really, it wasn't so much what is the thing, just I want my workday to be interesting. That's how I feel good about myself, and that's how I feel valued.
I don't want it to ever feel like work.
No, and there's definitely, I mean, all work, no matter how awesome. There's points where it's like, no, this is work.
It's kind of like work,
But like stuff like this, where I get to talk with students like you, or you know, even if we're not just having a conversation about my life, which almost seems strange to me because I don't feel it's that interesting. But you know, when I learn about your lives, or we're solving technical issues together, like that just gives me such immense joy. My favorite part of this whole job is like the kind of one-on-one or one-on-a-couple type of situations. I feel like that's where a significant amount of learning happens. So
Yeah, well, there's I guess a lot to unpack there, but
sorry,
no. I mean,
tangent.
it's great. Like I don't know why you say it's weird to talk about your life. Like we came for that reason. We
That's
wanted to
true.
hear about it. So thank you for sharing all that. But I think it's great, like Adam said, for Penn students to hear that a faculty member who, we come in as freshmen. I came in undecided. I was between actually some of the same majors as you were, between different branches of engineering. We all come in unsure what our plan is going to be, and we think, let me try and get a plan. Like I have to figure out what my life is. I got to decide my major by like, fall of my sophomore year or whatever. And then we look at the faculty members like you and think like they have it figured out, like why are they so much better than we are? Like, how can we get to that point?
Yeah.
But it's great to hear that really was not you weren't just born knowing I'm going to be a mechanical engineer, like it was very much the opposite.
Accounting. It's awesome.
The fact that you were in a similar boat as we were, and you had like several twists and turns along the way before you got to this point, kind of that trial and error to realize this is what you love to do. And at some point, it's not even about what it is you want to do, like planning it in advance, picking the one thing, but really just like making sure whatever it is you're doing, you're enjoying it,
Absolutely.
So it's great to hear that. And I hope that any listeners will kind of take that as a message away from this, that you don't need to plan everything out. If anything, it's better if you don't, so you can kind of like try it out, see what you like and see what you don't. So that's just one,
Can I just add something to that?
Yeah, of
like
course.
a life plan is not a bad thing. And I certainly have, long-term goals and more short-term goals. But I also think you said like, oh, we assume people have everything figured out. And it took me quite a while. I think it was like around the age of like 25 to 30 where I realized nobody has anything figured out, and those that do are pretty much faking. Or there might be some, but our parents don't have life figured out at the age of 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, whatever they might be. I think humanity is just kind of winging it. It's actually a beautiful thing. So
for that matter, imposter syndrome, anybody listening, especially Penn students, it's very big here, but nobody knows anybody else has it. It's a very big thing to think everybody else has it figured out. But like Graham said, people who are grown up, like my grandma who's 97 is still figuring some things out, So to think that you're the only one who's behind and you have stressed your life because of that, you get in a negative loop, is really silly, because everybody's in this together. We're all kind of finding our own paths, and in some cases those intersect. Things are very complicated, but we're all kind of navigating that path together is the important thing. And then kind of a pivot to something else you talked about, that really what you love, and you said, to quote you, it gives you immense joy to work through problems with students. Something that we are curious to hear about is more about your teaching. So like you said earlier that one of the very first things you said in kind of introducing yourself was that you were really thankful to grow up in an area with a really strong education system.
Yeah.
And you also said kind of in your follow-up about how you got from there to here, that I think you name dropped someone named Erin who helped you along the way.
Yeah.
Right? Robert Carpick, like the fact that you're acknowledging all these people who helped you get where you are. To me, I see that and think, so maybe he's now trying to give back. And I've TA'd a class, Adam and I both really love, mentoring and giving back to people because we've been provided a lot. We're very fortunate. So I'm curious for you if you kind of view your own interest in teaching as giving back because you've been fortunate enough to be taught by people, or, if there's some other kind of motivation, just in general, can you speak to some of the reasons that you love to teach so much, like what it brings you and what you feel you get to see in the students?
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, there's so many directions I could go with this because there's so many facets,
Yeah,
but I'll try to keep it high level. I tend to go on and on, but the thing that really, I would say a huge motivator for me early in my teaching career was I had a litany of awesome professors and instructors in my history of education. And I'd also had some really bad ones, those that don't care, those that don't contribute. And I think, there's that yin yang of it. And really early in my teaching career, it was like, can I do my students better than some of those experiences that I had? And can I pull and maybe channel some of that energy and that enthusiasm and just some of that love of life that those that I really admired had. And I don't know if I ever approached it from the perspective of so much giving back in a way, but it was more like, can I provide them with a content and an education that they deserve? From the perspective of a student, like they're trying really hard. Can I try as hard on my end to provide them with content and information and to the degree possible interactions
It's a two-way street.
Yeah. And so I know early on at UPenn, and I had some experiences like TAing, and then there's in my graduate school days, there was a course that I kind of ended up going beyond TAing and kind of just taking it over at some point. So I had started to understand what the center point of a UPenn student was. And I don't think it's just unique to UPenn students, but I do find the students here to be very invested, very smart, whatever that means. I think smart really just means work hard to a degree.
Yeah.
Kind of the best measure of it. And it's just like, can I reflect that back and give them what they deserve?
Right.
And also not do all the ineffective and unfun, or maybe unfun is the wrong word, but like ineffective and just lackadaisical things that I had experienced at time points in my education. So pulling the good from the good and trying not to do the ineffective bad things that I had experienced. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. You're optimizing for that. And as seniors in senior design, I'd love to shift the conversation to see how you're kind of bringing those elements of optimizing for the good and really enriching the student experience and making them really challenged. So with senior design, what are kind of like, if you could name like the 2 or 3 things that you're really trying to focus on or change from previous years, with this year's senior design process, whether it's process or the way that you're helping students, think about the pitch or the brainstorm or the implementation. We'd love to hear kind of things that you're trying to change or move towards this year.
Absolutely. And there's things that are more near term that are more COVID impacted.
Yeah.
So for example, the current cohort of seniors, they've had a big gap in those interpersonal interactions. So one of my focuses this year, and tying it into other things that are productive, is getting the students to kind of mix and meet with each other in a way that they might naturally do. One thing I've noticed in senior design is that like persons tend to combine with like persons. Whether it be gender, ethnicity, worldview, and things like that, which isn't always great for the design process, right? To have one myopic team brain.
Exactly.
So one of my goals this year is to get them intermixed a bit more and learn about each other. And I think in the process, respect each other, respect similarities and respect differences. So that's something very near term. Something that's really enabling that is the class size this year is actually, just for whatever series of reasons, is one of the smaller cohorts. I think our senior plug that has come through the university just was a bit smaller than the classes in front and behind them. And so that opens up the opportunity to use an active learning classroom, which is what I've never had before for the lecture portion of the class. So it's not so much lectures now, it's more meetings, which is heavily my preference. And when I say meetings, we're doing activities where it's like, let's do, so there's this analysis called SWOT analysis. Let's perform SWOT analysis, basically strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, things that you might experience in industry. So we can do those kinds of things now. So that's more of like a near-term thing, something that I've been working on long-term. And I feel like I was off the mark in my early days with senior design, but it's a learning process. I presented a very clean version of like what the design process looks like, and the design process is not clean. There's this really nice website, and I think a gentleman who originally started it called the Design Squiggle.
Oh
Have you seen?
It's the same way with your career trajectory.
Yeah, really.
It's hopefully I want mine to be.
I was gonna say, it's really analogous to your path. And then like, over the summer, I had an internship and I was responsible for designing a park. And I try to like lay out a plan at the beginning. My mentor is like, "This is not possible."
And you go
like,
here and
you're gonna talk to people and they're gonna tell you to change course. You're gonna make a design. You're gonna see it's not gonna be manufacturable. Like there's so many twists and turns in the design process and in life and in everything really, that it's not as much about how well you make a plan. It's about how well you accept advice and how well you adapt to things out of your control.
But also
right?
taking it with a
So-
grain of salt too. Like when you know that you're right, or when you know that you're passionate about something, like whether it's a career path or whether it's like the technical challenge, and you know that you're gonna put yourself to it and do it well because you're passionate,
Mhm.
you can take it with a grain of salt too.
Yeah, and to that point about, I guess, taking things with a grain of salt and trying to keep your options open a little bit. I was really interested to hear you talk about how senior design is prioritizing trying to intermix people who might not naturally work together. And now in 2021, it's especially critical because, like, speaking from my own perspective, I lived at home for a full year in COVID, and way too often, like, I mean, I literally saw the same 3 people every day, and they were my parents and brother. And so, sometimes being in isolation, and even if you hop on Zoom calls, it's limited the amount of people who you're able to reach out, schedule a Zoom call with. You can get a little bit more like in your own segment of the population and not really as much branch out and expose yourselves to different perspectives. Which is one of the risks of COVID, other than obviously mechanical engineering. We all miss the in-person aspects of engineering, but the in-person aspects of communication, like being able to come in and have conversations like this, or like when you walk to class and run into someone and chat for 10 minutes about what they're doing. Like those kinds of impromptu things are really what help us keep an open mind. And it's great to hear you say that from someone in your position who actually is able to take tangible action that affects students, that's a priority on that level as well. Trying to help people keep an open mind and work with other people who they might not necessarily agree on everything with, but then having those disagreements and growing from them and learning new things from that. There's so many aspects of learning process, and this is certainly one of the key ones.
It's the squiggle again, right? It's the randomness. If you had asked me 3 years ago, and I was having this internal conversation with myself and probably with my wife at times, just like, what is the trajectory of like a lecturer in that type of career? Is there stability in that job? What will that job look like in 10, 20 years? So this is the aspect of where you're planning and you're thinking about these things, and then also accepting the randomness and the opportunities that come in life. But 3, 4 years ago, if you had asked me like what I thought about the situation, I would say, I just have to be nimble. I don't know if a position like mine will exist in the future. There may even be more positions like that, less of the more research-oriented ones, or there may be this specialization and bifurcation, which is currently happening anyways, where more people are doing research and people are doing the teaching. But one of the comments I would have made is, I think most university classes will trend towards online content delivery. On the order of 1 to 2 decades. Because that's like we're a little different situation. Like Zoom didn't exist in the way it did like 2, 3 years ago. Having video conferences was still, it wasn't niche, but it was, the activation barrier was higher. So if you had asked me like 3, 4 years ago, I would say, oh, we're probably trending towards an online delivery model. I was completely wrong. There's so much of that squiggle of that randomness that enriches our lives. I think I now understand that university life and teaching and learning is more than just the content, right? The technical content. When I'm thinking about it from an engineering perspective, and there is so much based on the human interaction and the randomness of interactions that you have off the cuff, which, my gosh, in the last month, I have had more, non-premeditated, I have had more interactions that yielded good things in just this month than I had in the last year and a half.
Random. They weren't scheduled coffee chats, scheduled Zoom meetings.
Like, hey, that's you. I see you in 3D. Let's have lunch. And we talk about interesting things, and we, I learn about something. They maybe learn about something, and I think all of that has been done in less units of time than all of the scheduled, you can book me when to meet, Zoomified, whatever meetings that I had set up in the last year and a half. And there's something about being in 3D. The randomness of the interactions that just really helps forward ideas, learning, and things of that nature. So I completely changed course on my comments from 3 to 4 years ago that I never made to anybody, but admitting when you need to change your thought process.
So it looks like we're actually out of time now.
Are we?
Yeah. But I think to the audience out there, we've learned a lot of things today that our life is going to be like a squiggly path, and you can even internalize that and take it up to senior design. There's going to be a lot of freshmen listening to this and sophomores, and there's a lot of courses out there that can help out. with if you're undecided. Engineering 101 is a great course to take, as well as, even taking MEAM 101 or BE 101, courses that are introducing you to that specific discipline. And beyond that, just scheduling conversations with professors, scheduling conversations with Graham if you want to learn more about manufacturing and design, as well as anything else within mechanical engineering. Professors are always very open to having discussions with you. So thank you guys so much for tuning in today. We'll be interviewing more professors and faculty, even beyond outside of the mechanical engineering discipline this year. And it's our final year, me and Jason's final year. So we won't be here next year, but it's been really good, and we're going to keep it going for the rest of the year. And say hello to Graham as you're walking around the hall, since we are back in person. Thank you, everyone, and we're tuning out now.
Thank you all for tuning in.
Words, let's squiggle together.
Let's squiggle together.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure being back in person. This is actually our first ever in-person faculty spotlight, first of many, hopefully. Speaking for myself and Adam, we certainly enjoyed talking to you, Graham. Thank you so much for your time.
I always love talking with you, Jets. You're fun.
It's great. And I hope that anybody tuning in enjoyed learning more about Graham, hearing more about how we all view teaching, learning, squiggles, all kinds of things. So until next time, thank you for tuning in.
Bye.
That was fun, Jets. You're very